This is going to be such a cool video. We're going to be making this Star Wars fan film scene. Check it out.
You're late.
I'm here for the droid!
Come and take it.
We're going to walk through the entire process from beginning to edit to color management to effects, and we'll get a little bit of help with some sound design from our good friend Jason. And there's a link below where you can download these files and you can follow along. And my hope is that you'll just learn how to be awesome at DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so click that link in that description, download the media, and make your own Star Wars goodness. Let's go. So here we are in this blank project. The first thing we're going to do is import our media. I'm going to go down to the bottom part and click on Media, go to the media page, and I'm going to use this upper left panel, this media storage panel, to navigate to the media that we downloaded. So I want you to click the link below, download it, unzip it. If you have trouble unzipping it, make sure to use a different utility like 7-zip on Windows or the Unarchiver on Mac. Sometimes the built-in zip utility has some trouble. When you unzip your files, you should have 5 folders: audio, footage, map paintings, TIE fighters, and VFX bakes. All we have to do is select all of these and then just drag this down into this lower left panel here, right under where it says master. Just drag those down like this. And that, if I had my stupid camera, should give us 5 bins with our media. Should be easy as pie to have all this stuff in. There is no project file with this media because I want you to take this media and make your own thing. All right. So there's our media. It's imported in the project. Now I'm going to switch over to the edit page. Now, everything you see should look exactly like this. If it's not, go up to Workspace and hit Reset UI Layout, and it should look exactly like this. By the way, I'm working in DaVinci Resolve Studio 19. Pretty much everything that we'll do here, you can do in the free version of Resolve, but Resolve 19 is in public beta right now. So there might still be some bugs that might act a little strange sometimes, but there's a lot of really cool features that I want to show you as we make this. So if you haven't updated to Resolve 19, I would recommend that for following along here. A lot of this will still work in 18, but there are some differences. So let's go ahead and double click in our footage, and we have 6 shots here. And I'm just going to turn off the audio right now. We have our Jedi walking up to the camera. We have a couple close-ups of our Jedi. We have close-up of our Sith guy. We have an over the shoulder. I guess it's not really the shoulder, behind the back of our Jedi grabbing his lightsaber. And then we have the final duel where they run towards each other. Now, this is shot with some toy lightsabers, but we're going to make these look really cool. That's the power of the effects that we can do in Fusion. Before we even start editing, let's set some project settings. Let's go down here to the lower right and click on this settings cog. And here's our project settings. Timeline resolution, I'll just leave how it is. Frame rate, all of that stuff we can leave. But one thing I am going to do is set up our color management. Switch over here to our third item down. And here where it says color science, instead of DaVinci YRGB, I'm going to switch this to YRGB color managed. Now, what is this doing? We're changing Resolve into color managed mode. And what that means is it's going to take our ugly gray log footage that we're working with here, and it's going to put a color transform on that footage so that it looks good on screen. And it's going to do it in a very scientific, amazing way. And there's a lot of stuff before 19 I would have to teach you, but I actually don't have to do a whole lot anymore because they fixed a bunch of problems and everything is so much easier now with color management. We'll talk a little bit more about how the colors work here in a little bit, but for now, set this to YRGB color managed, and then we're going to uncheck automatic color management. That's because we're going to change a couple of settings here. And here where it says SDR Rec 709, this is mostly going to work great for us except for one little thing. So we're actually going to scroll down all the way to custom, and that's going to reveal all of the settings that it had automatically set, which are mostly great except for this timeline color space. The one thing that I want to do is change this from Rec 709 into DaVinci WG Intermediate. Click on that right there. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to know what any of this means. It's totally fine. Just switch timeline color space to DaVinci wide gamut intermediate. And then we're going to go and hit save. That's all we have to do. And then we are in color managed mode. Now, you might notice that our footage doesn't look any different. The reason for that is because we have to tell Resolve what our footage was shot with, what kind of camera we used, what kind of color science we used to shoot these shots. So let's select all of our footage here. I'm just going to select these, right click, and go down to Input Color Space. By default, it's Project Rec 709. What we're going to do is go to Blackmagic Design. And for these, this is Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. The reason I know that is because we were sure to remember the settings on our camera when we shot this. This is really important. So make sure this says Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5, and look what happens. Magic happens. Yes. So now anything that we see is going to be pretty accurate to how we shot it. It's going to look somewhat like it looked in real life. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it looks good. It doesn't necessarily mean that it looks exactly how we want it to look, but it does look accurate to how we shot it on that day, which is a great starting point and a lot better than looking at gray desaturated log footage that's just icky. Okay. So now we're set up and we can start editing. Our basic story is really simple. We wanted to keep this project extremely simple just so we can play around and have a good time here. And so these are almost in order anyway. I'm just going to double click on this first clip of him walking up. We're just going to set our in, which is the start of our clip, by hitting I, and then scroll through this. And then right about when he kind of stops, we're going to hit O for out. Okay. And then I can just take this and drag it down into the timeline like this, and then drag it all the way to the left. And now we have our first shot in the timeline. Ooh, one thing that I forgot is we have these black bars on top and bottom, which is fine. But if I have a widescreen shot like this, I like to actually just make the actual video resolution wide so that we don't have those black bars. It plays better when you export it to YouTube and Vimeo and all those kind of places. And so to switch this, let's go down to our project settings in the lower right. And here under master settings, instead of 1920 by 1080, let's grab this and say 1920 by 800. Okay. That'll switch this timeline resolution to custom. Then we'll hit save and look what happens. It gets rid of those black bars because it's taking this video and it's just putting it into a timeline that's the exact same resolution. Okay. Saves a little bit of computer power too, so that's good. So our guy walks up, takes off his hood, and he looks, and what does he see? He sees our bad guy, and so we have this over-the-shoulder shot of him, which needs a lot of work, but we're just kind of roughing this in right now. And so I'll set an in by hitting I, and an out by hitting O, and I can either drag this down to the timeline, or I can drag it over my timeline viewer here, and just select append at end. That's going to throw that at the end of the sequence. That works. Now we're going to cut to shot 102 here, where he talks. I'm here for the droid. Okay. Again, trim this to be about the right length, whatever we think. And we'll throw this in append at end. So he talks, and then we have the response from our bad guy here. We'll just throw this in next. Then we have this kind of worried look, and that's real short, just a little look like this. Append at end, and we'll have them run at each other. Again, we're going to start a couple seconds in. I'll hit I for in, and right about the time they're in the air like this, I think that's where we'll kind of stop it. Again, let's append at end. There we go. Here's what we have so far.
Sorry. Line.
Okay, we'll cut this audio out.
2, 1.
But the idea is that his lightsaber comes on, then his lightsaber comes on.
For the droid. Good.
Then we're going to have a line from this guy.
Sound good, Sam? Yeah. Okay.
Then they run at each other. Okay, pretty good story so far. One thing I'll do is I forgot to shorten this shot. So we're going to cut this to be a little bit shorter. We'll just trim this a couple seconds in, and we can do the same thing for the end. I feel like we can get out of this a little faster. And one shortcut I can use is Control-Shift-Right bracket. And what that'll do is chop off the end of that clip, and it'll also trim it and move everything up. And left bracket does the opposite, trim off the front of the shot. But we're just gonna go with something like that for now. And so our basic story is here. Obviously needs a lot, but the timing and everything is pretty good. Let's talk about the audio for just a minute. The one line that we're really gonna use is this third shot right here.
I'm here for the droid.
I'm here for the droid. Okay, so that's great, except for it's in the left ear only, and we're not really gonna need any of the other audio. So I think I'll just hold down Alt and select all of these tracks, hold Control and select this one. So I'm just selecting all of the audio tracks and I'll hit backspace. So we just have this one audio track left. And I'm gonna go over to this audio one, this track, right click on that empty space and say change track type to mono. What that'll do is just use one of the audio tracks from our recording.
I'm here for the droid.
And that's going to take that, what was the left track, and put it into both ears. And that sounds pretty good.
I'm here for the droid.
The other thing I might do is go over to our audio here, and I want to try out our music, which is right here, this Jedi battle music. This was made by our editor, Sam, who is a genius at making music. And so this is all original music, which is crazy. I mean, obviously it's based on Star Wars, but dude, check this out. So it's just a mix of a bunch of Star Wars themes. So cool. So cool. If you think this is awesome, I want you to say, good job, Sam, in the comments, because man, that's just awesome. So we're gonna take this audio, I'm just gonna drag from anywhere here and just drag it into audio 2 like this. And Sam actually had a rough edit of this video when he started making that music. And so it's actually relatively well timed with our cuts. And so I'm just gonna double check that and make sure that it feels really good. Oh, this feels great already. So awesome.
I'm here for the droid.
Man, it works pretty well. That's mostly because I kind of remembered about the timing on this, but for you, I'd recommend making sure this cut is right there on this little part where right where that piano hits. Now, we had the luxury of Sam making this music for us, but not everybody has a Sam. Yeah, in which case you're gonna need to find some good music. Do you ever get totally stuck trying to find music for your video? You're pouring through random sites trying to find something that actually sounds professional and not the stock music that you've heard on every video ever. And then, glorious day. Here's an awesome track, but it has this weird vocal thing that just ruins it. And just like that, hours are gone and you still don't have the right music and you still haven't finished your video? Well, I know the feeling. And now, to avoid that misery, I just use audio. Audio has a huge library of music that you can access for any project, from YouTube to films to TV, and it's all crazy good quality. A couple of weeks ago, I met the guy that runs the QA team at Audio, and he told me that they painstakingly listen to every single track to make sure it's awesome. And so there's only great stuff on the site, you know, music that you actually want to use for your videos. And they're adding new music every single day. It's super easy to find what you want with their AI link match tool. Just paste in a link to your favorite song and it'll magically bring up similar songs that you can use for your videos. This saves a ton of time. And if you find a song that's almost right, except for that pop vocal or those dramatic drums. You can download stems of any track. This is nuts. Every song in their library has alternate mixes, and so you can download just the drum track or isolate the guitar, and then you can mix the different tracks together to make your own custom song that's perfect for your project. Best of all, audio is super affordable. It's just $1.99 a year for unlimited access to the audio library of music and sound effects. And if you use the code KC70, you can get 70% off 1 year of Audio Pro. That's a whole year of awesome music for $59.70. And so if you need music for your videos, this is kind of a no-brainer. Click the link in the description to check out audio and use that code KC70 to get this smoking deal right now. And just kind of massage these cuts to feel good to the music. Now, when you're doing your own thing, you kind of have to go back and forth and have a rough cut and then make the music to it, or edit the music and kind of get that timing right. For us, it's a little bit easier because we can just match it to the music, and it happens to be a good cut because, we made a good cut and then made the music to it. So we're cheating a little bit here, but you get the idea. This is the dialogue for our Jedi. And so I'll just call this Jedi DIA. This one, we're going to say music, and let's add some dialogue from our Sith, our bad guy. We have 2 lines from him. One of them is standing here where he says, "You're late." And then the other one is here where he says, "Come and take him." This whole movie is about this Jedi coming to rescue his droid from the Sith guy. And we're going to add the droid later in effects. We could probably mock that up, but for now, we're just going to add the voiceover. The nice thing about having a mask where you don't see somebody's mouth is you can just put their voice whenever you want. We have a lot of freedom there. The first thing I'm going to do is right click here in our tracks and say add track, add mono. And this is going to be our Sith dialogue. Our actor's name is Ryan, so we double click on Ryan VO, and we should have both of his lines here.
"You're late."
Oh, so good. So I'm going to do that kind of third line. I like that one. Hit I for in.
"You're late."
O for out. And we'll drag this down somewhere in this clip.
"You're late."
Yeah, maybe right before this music hit.
"You're late."
So he says, "You're late," and then he starts his lightsaber, and then the Jedi grabs his lightsaber and starts that. And by the way, to move back and forth on the timeline like this, I'm just grabbing it by pressing down on my scroll wheel on my mouse. And I can just move things back and forth. And that works for everything in Resolve. Anything you want to kind of move and scroll around, you just grab by pressing down on your scroll wheel. And so let's add his line here, and that's going to be later in his VO.
"Come and take it. Come and take it."
Yeah, that one's good. That one's nice and broody.
"Come and take it."
Great. Let's drag this down here to our second track. I'm going to boost it up a little bit. And let's do this right before that hit.
"Come and take it."
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So come and take it. And then they run towards each other, and that's the end. Cool. This is so awesome. So exciting. Okay. So we have kind of the main sound there. We're going to add stuff after we have effects, and I'm actually going to have our buddy Jason do that because he's a audio wizard. So more on that in a little bit, but let's mock up kind of the effects that we want on here, because I think most of our editing and our basic sound and everything is done, and the effects come next. So let's just kind of mock this up a little bit. Here we have this kind of blank sky, and it would be great to put some Star Wars-y stuff back there. And so in our media pool, under matte paintings, we have a few different things that the very talented Dan painted in Procreate on iPad. And it's admittedly not super realistic. We kind of wanted to go for the retro matte painting kind of look, but let's just grab this and drag this in. We're just going to mock this up. Okay. I'm going to select this and then go to this little button right here, this transform button, and we can kind of move stuff around like this and kind of mock it up. I can go into the inspector and go down to composite. And right here under opacity, we'll just take the opacity down a bit. And so we can kind of get an idea of what we want this to look like as far as our sky replacement goes. So we'll have this big radar dish, and maybe we'll have, I'll just hold down Alt and drag another one here. Let's just take it like this and flip it, kind of put one over here. We were thinking maybe putting a planet in the sky, but we realized that it's kind of foggy and cloudy, and so you wouldn't really see a planet. We still put it in the media files in case you want to play around, but we do have some mountains that we can throw in, and that's going to be kind of the same thing. We'll just put some mountains there and take this opacity down. So we kind of see kind of what we're going for here, right? We got the mountains in the background. That's kind of what we're going for. The other thing is it would be cool to have some kind of spaceships flying by. One of my favorite is a TIE fighter. And so here under our media pool, we have several different shots of our TIE fighter. And this is just a miniature. So again, we wanted to do it old school. And that's how they did all the ships in Star Wars back in the day, is they actually shot miniatures on a blue screen. And so we're doing sort of that in that we have a miniature on a blue screen. We're not doing the exact same thing where we have a camera in motion and everything. We're doing a little bit of a cheaper trick here, but we can still do a pretty cool thing. So here's kind of a back quarter view of our TIE fighter. And so we'll just throw this in like this. And again, we'll flip it. And we'll have some TIE fighters kind of going by. Okay, going into the distance. And we could even keyframe these if we wanted to. We're just mocking this up. This is going to be very bad, but we'll get the idea of what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to extend this TIE fighter out across my whole shot and go to the beginning of the shot and keyframe our position and our zoom and heck, our rotation too. I'm going to zoom out like this. We'll just bring this off screen. And then throughout the shot, we're going to have this kind of go this way and get really small. Okay. So again, this is bad. It's going to be bad. But look, we have a flying here. You know what I mean? That kind of thing's happening. We'll need to figure out the timing and everything on that, but we get the idea. Our TIE fighter's going by. Maybe we'll have a couple TIE fighters. I'll just change this anchor point to kind of move this around. Same thing here, anchor point, move them around. We have 3 TIE fighters, right? Yeah. So cool. And that's what's happening. We'll just have these kind of undo. So this is a very bad mock-up of what's going on. But you can see it, right? You can see it in your mind's eye. That's important. Have some kind of vision, some kind of plan here, because it's a lot easier to plan things out here where we can just move things around really easily than when we get super deep into Fusion. Okay. Now we got to figure out these laser swords. I'm going to figure out our timing here.
You're late.
I think right there is what we want. I'm going to go over to the effects, close our media pool, go to generators, and let's just grab a solid color. I'll grab that and just drag that in. And let's make this red. Okay, there we go. And I'll grab our transform and we'll just transform this and just change this around, change our rotation and everything. And I'm just going to put this block just really, really terribly over our lightsaber here. So we can just tell when this turns on. We're going to make this look good here in a few. Yeah, there we go. Turn off our transform controls.
Late.
Right? Okay, so that turns on. So now he grabs his, and then that one starts too. I'm just going to alt drag this solid color and turn this to like a blue, cyan kind of look. And we're going to change this position, change the zoom a little bit, change the rotation. And I'm just going to kind of move this into place to kind of mock this up. Again, doesn't have to be good at all. We just got to know when this stuff goes down, when it happens. Okay. So that's going to turn on like here-ish. So
You're late.
boom, red saber, grabs the saber, turns it on pretty quick. Grabs it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about right. Move that over just for kicks. Maybe just a little bit. Yeah, great. So now we have kind of the basic timing there, and we can use that when we build our effects later.
I'm here for the droid.
And we're just going through the whole thing and seeing if there's anything else we'll need to do. Let's make a note here. I can just use some text. I'll just use a normal text note. Erase reflection, right here, because you can see, if you zoom in, that there's a reflection of the camera guy right there. And we don't want that. We actually want the reflection of the Jedi there. There's also a problem with this light that we have on his face. It almost looks like a lightsaber, but not quite. So we're going to change that to actually look like a lightsaber. So we're going to erase the reflection, and I'm just going to alt drag this text, and we'll say make lightsaber reflection this size down a little bit. Move this over. Move this over. Also going to add one more note of add Jedi reflection. So we're going to do all of these things in Fusion, but we're making little notes to ourselves so we don't forget, right? Because that'd be embarrassing. This guy's fine. This, we need to add lightsabers, right? So I'm just going to add text here because the lightsabers are going to be on the whole time. So here. Okay. Last thing I'll do is probably adjust this timing a little bit. Okay, so I want those to fly by a little bit faster. So actually, I'm just going to reset all of this transform, and we'll have the TIE fighter start maybe like right about here. We'll just keyframe the position here. Maybe a little bit bigger. Make sure we flip it. So it'll start off screen. Yeah. So by here, the position is going to be way over here. And we're also going to keyframe the zoom. So we're going to have that like be just about gone. Okay. So let's see if this timing works. Make these come in a little faster. Okay, again, we're going to have 3 of these, so I'll just adjust the anchor point. Very good, very good. Okay. So this is bad, but everything is there. It just needs to look better, okay? It needs to look better, sound better. And I think this is ready to take the next step on. Actually have some good effects. I'll throw this over to Jay to start working on for the audio.
You're late.
We know what's happening. Oh, we forgot the droid. Okay, we got to do the droid. Where's our boy? In VFX Banks here, we have a clip called Droid 1. And this is just a shot of a miniature. This guy's like maybe 2 feet tall, actually out in the same environment with just a green screen just crappily thrown behind him. And this effect works so well. It's crazy how good this works. The one thing I'll do is select all of these clips and go to input color space and make sure that we tag those right. Blackmagic Design, Film Gen 5. I'm going to double click on this, and we're just going to grab a little bit of him kind of moving back and forth. Something like that. And throw him here on this shot. I'm just going to crop this real quick with our crop controls in the inspector. Okay. And we're just going to roughly size him and move him kind of where he needs to be, somewhere like that. So we just remember there's a droid there. We don't forget to put him in, because that would suck. Okay. So put him there. And then in this other shot, he needs to be the side shot. So we'll do kind of a similar thing, in, out, drag him in right there. Just trim him. Okay, great. Let's crop him left, right, bottom, top. We could also, I mean, do a little green screen on him too, but it doesn't matter for this. It's fine. So we'll put him back here, make sure he's sized about right. And just to make things easier, we're not going to plan on rotoing our guy. Let's just put him right behind where the Sith guy is. He'll just be waiting. Here we go. So cool. Okay, so this is roughed in. So let's get started with some effects here. What I'm gonna do is just add a marker to our clips here, right here before and after our TIE fighters fly by, just so we have a rough idea of the timing. And then I'm not gonna probably bring any of this into Fusion. I'm just gonna hit D to disable those and then go here to our clip itself and then just click into Fusion. Okay. One thing I'll do is go up to Workspace and uncheck Show Page Navigation and zoom this in a little bit just so we have some space to work from our in and out. And we're going to replace this sky. And the first thing that we want to do is probably track this. By the way, I am going to assume you know a little bit about Fusion during this part. If you don't know Fusion and you're like, what the heck is even going on? Well, I teach Fusion all the time. A great place to get started is right up there. That's our 9 nodes workshop, the 9 nodes that you need to make almost anything in Fusion. That'll give you a really solid foundation for working with nodes here in Fusion. I would probably pause here and get a little bit of wisdom before we dive in. One thing I'll do is go up to playback and I'm gonna switch off our proxy handling. Let's just disable all proxies just so we make sure we're working on the full res footage. And I'm gonna track the movement of this sky so that we can replace the sky. I'll hit Shift Spacebar. And we're gonna type in planar tracker. And I'm just gonna select all of these trees here, the trees in the sky. And I'm just defining an area where we're gonna put a whole bunch of trackers. Let's go up to where it says reference time and hit set. And then I'm gonna track to end. There we go, it's tracked to the end and we'll go back to our reference time and track it backward. Okay. It looks like everything's working. Okay, now we're gonna click this button, Create Planar Transform, and that's gonna make a planar transform node, and we'll just hit F2 and rename this. We'll call this Sky Track _ PXF, so we remember this is a planar transform. I'll take this planar tracker, hold Shift, and drag it out like that, just because we don't really need it. In fact, I can probably just get rid of it. What we really need is this Sky Track PXF. And now with this planar transform, this is the movement of the sky relative to the camera. And so this is what we're going to use to stick things to the sky. So if I have some text, let's just say some text, and I run this through the transform, take the output of this transform and merge it over our media 1 like this. We have some text, and as we go back and forth, it's going to stick to those trees. All right. So anything that we run through this transform is going to stick to the sky, and it's going to do a beautiful job. We're going to build our sky on top of that. Let's go to our media pool, over to our matte paintings. And the first thing I'm going to grab is our mountains. So I'll drag our mountains in. I'll rename this mountains _ MI for media in. We'll also grab a radar _ MI. And we're going to merge these together. I'll just drag a merge node here, put that into our planar transform, and put our radar on top of that. One thing I'm going to do is make sure that my planar transform here in the inspector, that this scale to source is clicked. This is very important. This is new in Resolve 19. Make sure you have this or it will ruin your track. Just click it on. Now the mountains, let's shift spacebar and type XF for transform. And we're going to scale these. Let's just scale these to be exactly how we want. Just kind of move these around a little bit. Sure. Now that's going to stick. Take this radar, same thing, XF, and we'll scale this down. We'll put the radar over here somewhere. Okay. Now let's take these mountains. I'll hit 1 on the keyboard to bring this up here in our left viewer. And we're going to mask these mountains so that they kind of fade out. So let's take just a rectangle mask and plug this right into the blue input of the mountains. And we're going to make this really wide and a little taller but then I'm going to bring this up like this. So we're just chopping off the bottom of it. And then we're going to push up the soft edge. That's just going to fade that out. It's going to do a great job. Just bring this up a little bit. So now we have this mist, the mountains. And our radar, let's scale this down and kind of move this, rotate this however we want. Let's put that somewhere in there. And this all looks pretty good. Let's take the opacity of this merge 1 down. And what that's going to do is just blend it with the color of the sky. This works for overcast sky like this, as well as a blue sky. You can just take this blend down and look, it just pushes it back in the atmosphere. So this is really, really far away, and then you could bring it forward. And so we just bring it here until it looks about right. So I don't know, 37%, something like that. That looks cool. Looks like it's really foggy. And that just works pretty well. In fact, because this is faded out at the bottom, we almost don't even need to cut out our trees. I mean, we could just about get away with it. Like even here in the trees, you'd really have a hard time arguing that it's in front of the trees. So we might just call it good. I mean, I don't see a reason to fix it if it ain't broke. So dang, I think we kind of get lucky on that side of things because this is such a foggy day and it's so faded out. It's just, we just don't even need to do much here. If we did have some stronger elements here in the background, what we could do is we could do something like a Luma matte. So I'm just going to type Luma Keyer, the LKY version, and we'll just run the media into that. I'll hit 1 on the keyboard so we can bring this up, and I'll hit A to bring up the alpha channel. And what we want for a matte, if you're going to do any kind of keying or if you're going to cut things out, you want a matte to generally be black and white. You don't want this gray if you want something to be completely opaque. And so we're going to push this high threshold down until we just kind of blow out the sky a little more. And that's going to be just fine, most likely for what we're doing. Push the low up a little bit and darken those trees. And then we're just going to hit invert. And that's just going to give us this matte that we can put these trees kind of back over our elements here. So we can just merge this over. And you can see a small difference here. So if I turn off the merge 3, turn this off and on, you'll see there's a difference. There's a little bit more definition here in this part of the tree, and I just don't think it's going to matter that much. But technically, that's the right way to do it. You can also use this Luma Keyer as just a mask for everything that we're putting in the foreground. So I can take this merge 1, put this in like this, select the merge 1. We can go over to settings, and here we'll just say apply mask inverted. And that's going to essentially do the same thing. It's only going to put these background elements in where the trees aren't. Okay. And so if I were to take this blend all the way back up, it'd be a lot easier to see. These are in front of the trees, right? So we have the trees in front of them. And we can adjust this keyer to kind of adjust how much trees we want to see in front of it. But we're getting lucky this time in that we probably don't even really need to do that. It's not really going to matter that much. So I'm just going to get rid of this and we'll just take the blend way down and it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine just like that. Like we're not going to have an issue. The one thing I might do is just add a soft mask to my radar, kind of like we did with the mountains. Again, just make this a little bit bigger. And I just want to kind of fade this out at the bottom, just so I don't have that harsh edge that'd be really easy to see down the road if we decided we wanted to turn it a little bit harsher and kind of fade that out. That's just a little safer. I don't think anybody's going to really notice that. One thing we can do to double check is go up here to these 3 dots and go to gain gamma. And we can push this around. We can push the gain up, push the gamma around, and we can just really see if we're seeing any problems. Take the gain down maybe a little bit and just see if there's really any obvious problems here. And I mean, you could maybe argue like here in the tree, but gosh, you're just never going to notice it. So I'm not going to worry about it because I ain't going to do a bunch of work for no reason. Call me a hack if you must, but we're actually going to get shots done today. So now we have the background tracked in, looks pretty good. And again, admittedly, not the most realistic thing in the world, but feels kind of classic Star Wars. And that's sort of what we're going for. Let's get a little bit more organized here. We don't need the Luma Keyer or the merge. All this stuff is the sky. So I'm going to select all of it and hit Shift Space and type UND for underlay. That's going to add this little background thingy here. I'm going to double click off of it, hold Alt, click it so I can grab it by itself without selecting everything that's on top of it. And I can hit F2 and we'll just call this sky replace. And well, why don't we just make it kind of a blue because it's the sky, you see? So we're doing good here. I'm going to get rid of this little zoom thing just by hitting V on the keyboard. Now let's talk about our TIE fighters. I'm going to open up the keyframes panel here, just clicking on that. And here for our media in, look, we can see those markers that we added on the edit page. So I'm going to go to fit to all. I'm also going to go to these three dots and say show only selected tools and just go down and grab media in. Okay. Let's click on this button and give us a little bit more room for our keyframes panel here. Hold Control and zoom in a little bit. And in between these markers, this is kind of where I want our TIE fighters to fly by. So let's go ahead and slap a TIE fighter in here. Let's go up to our media pool and here under TIE fighters, let's use tieback.png and I'll just grab this and drag it in, close our media pool. Let's hit 1 on the keyboard to bring this up. So this is a TIE fighter shot on a blue screen, and this was actually shot in that same color space. So I'm going to select all of these, right click, and go to Input Color Space, Blackmagic Design, Film Gen 5. And that's going to give us a little more realistic colors. And let's rename this TIE Mai. It's different than a Mai Tai. It's less fun, or maybe more fun, depending on who you are. And we shot this on blue screen so that we could key this if we want to, but honestly, with a still, I'd probably just take some time and mask it out. So I'm gonna grab our new multi-poly tool, grab this and connect this here to TIE_MI, select that multi-poly, and I'm gonna turn off its switch. That's so that we can actually see what we're drawing on. And on this first polygon, I'm just gonna go around our TIE fighter wing here. I don't know what you'd call this. I bet there's some like really great, it's probably called a side foil or something. You nerds, you tell me. Okay, so there's one. Let's go over here to add poly and add another polygon. Let's rename this. I'm gonna call it foil. Foil SL for screen left. That's gonna be confusing when we move this around, but whatever, it's fine. Okay, polygon. Let's do the other one. And you can zoom in and be super careful with this, but this TIE fighter is gonna go past so quickly, nobody's going to care how good of a job we did here. Again, we're being lazy. It's okay to be lazy if nobody will ever notice. It's totally fine. It can come back and bite you, but it's not going to this time. No way. I'm sure of it. Okay, so foil SR for screen right, and then we're going to do the middle part here. Add polygon, and let's just kind of go around here. I'm just going to butcher this thing. Just butcher it. Oh, it's misery. Can't believe how bad of a job I'm doing, and no one will ever know or care. Okay, there we go. Boom. Okay, and if we turn on our multi-poly, look what happens. It gets rid of the background. Yay! All right, now we have our TIE fighter, and we can take this and merge it over everything. We're actually going to run this through our planar transform too. I'll just hit Control-C, Control-V, hold Shift, and drag this in between. Boom, like that. That's going to make sure that our TIE fighter sticks to our trees for our movement. So it actually moves with the background here. We're going to take this TIE fighter and let's resize it. I'm going to type XF for transform, size this down a little bit, and I'm also going to flip it. Use this and flip it like this, because it's actually going to fly from screen left to screen right. And we'll just kind of mock this up where it'll be part of the time. Maybe a little smaller than that, somewhere in there. Now that we have our TIE fighter all ready, let's go back to our media in, and we're going to take note of when we want this to start. In fact, I'm actually just going to zoom in to right there where our first frame is here on the left. And then let's go over here to our next marker. So it's going to be pretty much gone by this point. So again, I'll just zoom this in like this. And now we have our work area that goes all the way from left to right. And this is pretty much the entire time we're going to see the TIE fighters. So it's going to be nice to not get distracted. We'll just look at this with one viewer for now. Let's actually make another transform, and I'll show you why in a minute. And we'll call this main XF for main transform. Okay. Our flyby movement is going to be handled by the main transform. And just our kind of scale and general position of this little TIE fighter is going to happen with this one. So we'll just call this TIE XF1. Sure. Let's reset the center. I'll just double click on the center like this. And so we have that in the middle. So the reason we're doing that is because I plan on adding more TIE fighters and I want to individually be able to move them, but I also want to move them as a group. And so we have this main TIE fighter movement, which I can move back and forth like this. But if I want to eventually connect multiple TIE fighters to this so that I can have them, you know, be in like a little squadron kind of thing. So let's take this main transform, and at the beginning of our work area here, so that's at frame 48, we're going to have this completely off screen. So we're going to have it come this way like this. I'm going to keyframe this main transform. Let's just hit center like that. And then towards the end of this, we're going to have this come all the way that way. And it's going to kind of go off into the distance like that. Let's actually make some keyframes for the size as well. So I'm going to size this down. That's going to handle kind of the main perspective sizing of that guy. So we'll do like this and it'll kind of disappear into the distance. Let's just see how that looks. I'm going to get rid of our background so we can just play this back a little easier. Okay, so this is flying. And I think what we want to do is have it move faster as it's closer and then slower as it goes away, because that's kind of how perspective works. And so I'm going to go to the spline panel and let's again show only selected tool. So this displacement and size, let's frame that. And I'll select both of these and hit F on the keyboard to flatten those out. Yeah, and we'll kind of fade this out also. So let's take the merge 3 and here with our blend, we'll blend this down. We'll kind of start it here and then towards the end, we'll have this pretty much gone. So again, we'll just hit F on the keyboard to flatten out that keyframe. Kind of goes off into the distance. Yeah. Now, I think this main movement probably needs to be faster at first. So let's take all of these, I'll hold Alt and kind of bring it out here to the left. Same thing here. And we're just going to let this curve be really, really fast at first. And then really just kind of calm down over time. So it goes really quick at first and then just kind of slows down because it's going farther away, right? Yeah. Great. So one thing that we're missing here is some motion blur. So in this main transform, let's go over here to settings and click on motion blur. That's going to add some very bad motion blur. So we're going to have to boost that up quite a bit. I would say 7-ish. We're also going to take this merge and take the blend down just a touch so that we're blending this in with the environment. And this is one instance where we might want to do a matte and put this behind the trees. So we could do that, just like I said before, or we can just move it up at the beginning, which is going to be way easier. Maybe not better, but easier. Let's just see how that goes. Yeah, that's cool. Now I think this, I accidentally added another keyframe to this blend. So let's actually take that down. And we're just going to flatten this out like this so that it gets less opaque as it goes away. It works pretty well. It works pretty well. Cool. One thing I'll do is take this main guy, move him to the left just a little bit. Yeah, that's going to work really well. Now to watch this back, I'm going to go back to the edit page, go over here to playback and say under render cache, let's just say smart. And that's going to cache anything it needs a little bit more help playing back. And let's just see how this looks in real time. Ooh, one thing I want to do though is double check my cache settings. So under project settings, under master settings, let's go down here. Ooh, look at this. I think somebody saw one of my videos because I've been complaining about this for a long time. Usually this is set to uncompressed 10-bit, which is just going to murder your system. But apparently in Resolve 19, it's HQX, which is actually a great thing to set your render cache to. So we'll just go ahead and just call that good. All right, so now we have this flying past. I think that looks pretty sweet. And we're going to do a couple things here. One is we're going to duplicate the TIE fighters. And so let's do maybe like a multi-merge after this. And we're going to take this transform and just copy and paste it a couple times. Run this TIE fighter into those transforms and then connect each of these to a multi-merge. See what we're doing here? So now we're basically making 3 copies of this thing. Just organize this a little bit. And we'll put one of these. I'll bring up that multi-merge. We'll bring one of those here like this and another one here like this. So now we have 3 of these. Okay, and as we play this back, let's kind of move these back and forth just so we have a little bit of parallax. And so we're going to keyframe the center of this boy to start kind of back here and then end this way. And maybe we'll have this guy kind of move like this, keyframe it. So something like this, and then kind of have those spread apart. And that's going to give us a lot more realistic result. So now as these fly by, they kind of change. I think we could probably even have them change a little more. Yeah, let's have them change a lot more. So maybe something like this. Maybe move it up like that. This one will have it kind of move down like that. And I'll hit Control and select all of these. Go to our spline panel and select these all. And hit F on the keyboard for both of these keyframes so that they kind of start and end slowly. Okay, let's just see how this goes. So now we play this back. Yeah, much better. Very cool. Awesome. And again, this is kind of going in front of the trees. I just don't know if it's going to matter that much. But you know what? We're going to be cool. We're going to do it right. Let's plug this Luma keyer in. And again, I'm just going to change this and hit A on the keyboard. And I'm just going to worry about this right here. And we're just going to worry about kind of the core of this. Okay. And that's going to basically just give us the sky. And we're going to use this as a mask for that merge for our TIE fighters. What's going to happen is these are going to go in front of our leaves. We can adjust this to be better or worse. Let's just take this down a little bit. Maybe blur it just a touch. There we go. So now there's the difference that we're seeing. Holding that out so that it goes behind the trees. We're doing a good job. We're doing a good job here, kids. All right, that looks pretty sweet. I love that. Last thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of exhaust here from this engine, which we're going to use with the paint tool. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the paint tool, it's just a way that you can just paint on a frame. And I'm going to just go to normal stroke mode. And we're going to do kind of a cyan color, make the size a little bigger, make this a little bit softer. So like 1.5. We're just going to start coloring this in like that. And then we'll make this white and just put that here in the middle. And we get the idea here too. Now, something we could do, because this kind of engine, I did a little bit of research. This engine has little dots on the edges. And so if we wanted to be really crazy, we could put a little dot on each of these little spines. Oh, that's just next level cool, right? It's probably not, we probably won't even see it with the motion blur, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to know we did it. Right? Something like that. That looks cool. And now we have that exhaust here. And we can see it here in the finished thing, baby. That's cool. We'll turn on our mountains. Okay. Let's see how this looks. Oh, so sick. So sick. Just going back into the distance. The one thing is that when it's kind of overlapping that mountain, we probably need to move this mountain over a little bit. So let's just take that mountain, just take these mountains over a touch, just so that they can go into the fog after that. And we could do a whole lot of work with this. It's just, it would never end. Let's make this a little bigger. We could do a whole lot of work perfecting this, but we're going to move on. I want you to spend as much time as you want making this perfect. You get the idea. For this shot, let's take a look at it. Oh, so cool. So cool. All right. That's pretty sweet. Cool. The fade right here isn't super realistic. We should work on that more, but I'm not going to in this video. All right. This shot is a lot of work, and I'm going to come back to this in a little bit. Let's take a look at a couple different shots here. This shot here where we have to erase the reflection, add the Jedi, and make the lightsaber. This is kind of a tricky thing, but it's not too bad. So let's jump in here. I'm just going to get rid of our text for now, and we're going to jump into Fusion. Okay, so the big thing we need to do is we need to get rid of this reflection, which involves painting things out, cloning it like you would in something like Photoshop. We're also going to do a similar thing here to this light and replace it with a lightsaber looking beam. So one thing that we need to do is get rid of this noise, because look, when you play this back, there's a lot of noise. And if we put a still in here that doesn't have any noise and we mix it with the thing that does have noise, that's going to be a dead giveaway. Okay, so let's not do that. I'm going to zoom this in here so we can get our work area. We're going to reduce the noise. Now, to use the noise reduction tools in Resolve, you have to have the paid version of Resolve, the studio version. There are other plugins that you can use that you can totally use with the free version. One of them that I recommend is Neat Video. Neat Video is amazing, but I'll show you just how to do this in the studio version of Resolve. We're going to type in noise, and we're going to go to noise reduction. And this is going to bring up essentially the same kind of noise reduction that you get in the color page under the motion effects palette here. I'm going to go to spatial noise reduction and go to Ultra NR like that and show the patch. And I'm going to click Analyze. And I'm mostly concerned about the noise on the helmet. So I'm going to move this over here, and it's going to set my Luma and Chroma values how it wants. I'm also going to push up the temporal threshold just a touch. And that's going to get rid of a lot of that noise. It is going to soften it just a touch, but it's not too bad. It's going to get rid of a lot of that dancing noise. See here. Here's before and here's after. Just kind of make sure it's not killing anything else here. Is getting rid of a lot of that. It is softening it just a touch, but it's not terrible. So I think we'll call that good. Again, there are some other tools that are a little bit easier. You don't have to know as much about what the heck's going on, but I didn't know that much about this, and it turns out pretty good. So we've removed our noise. So I'm just going to take off our noise reduction just so this plays back a little bit easier for now. Here's pretty much how this is going to work. We need to track this reflection and clone it out, paint the guy out. And we also need to put these drips in front of whatever we paint out. So let's go ahead and just start with a tracker, just a regular tracker. And with reflections, you have to be careful not to track the actual object, but track the actual reflected objects because they're going to move differently, right? We can see how this part moves different than the trees and the grass and everything. There's a little bit of parallax there. So if we don't track this right, it's going to be a dead giveaway. One thing is this little bit right here. We can probably track that. I'll turn our noise reduction back on. Let's take our tracker. And I'm just going to put this over our little white part here. There we go. And we're using IntelliTrack. Let's just see how this goes. So I'm going to track forward. Oh, that noise reduction is making it go crazy. So let's just take that out. There we go. Tracking this with IntelliTrack back and forth. And that's, I think, doing pretty good. Let's go through here. It looks like it's pretty much stable on that. Okay, I'm going to make another IntelliTrack. And we're going to go towards the top of our reflection here and maybe just this part. Let's just see if that tracks. And I'm going to uncheck our first IntelliTrack just so we don't track that as well. So we just don't need to. Looks like it's working pretty well. Back up a little bit. We'll track that backwards from current time. I think it's doing pretty good. So now we have both of our trackers here, and I'm just going to take this tracker out, but we're going to use this motion to match move a painted version of this. So let's take a still of our original footage, and we'll just do that with time speed. There's a node called time speed here. We'll just drag this out, and I'll hit 2 on the keyboard. For speed, let's hit 0. And let's do this at like 120. So delay, let's do 120. And so at 120, if we merge this over, again, like this, we shouldn't see any difference when we turn this off and on. Okay, but other places we will. Okay, so that means that we are actually locking the time there at 120. So all I've done is freeze framed this at frame 120, and it's just putting that over our original footage. Now we're going to take our tracker, and let's just take this, and we're going to use this tracker as a merge. So I'll just get rid of this and hold shift and drag this tracker in, and we'll just call this reflection track. And we'll put this time speed into the green input of the reflection track. Select that tracker, and we're going to go to operation and switch that to match move. So instead of none, we're going to switch it to match move like that. And now what'll happen is our footage will kind of move around like this. But we only want to paste this reflection over this part here. And so what we're going to do is cut this out using a matte control. So a matte control is a great way to cut something out kind of down the line instead of applying a mask to our media in that would kind of flow through the entire node graph. We can use this matte control and do something like attach a mask to the garbage matte, which is the gray input. And we can draw a little shape here. Just select the part that we want to grab. And I'm going to invert this. We just have this around this part here. We're just isolating this little patch. Take this polygon and soften it a little bit. Soften this edge just a touch. So now let's play this back and see if it actually worked. And I think for the most part, it looks pretty good. You kind of have to ignore the front parts here and just kind of look at the rest of it. I think it looks, it's not perfect, but I think it'll probably work. Okay. A dead giveaway is this noise, which I'm going to kind of boost up so you guys can see it a little better. This is why we're going to noise reduce this, is because you can see really clearly the difference. See that? That's why you have to match your noise. Okay. So that's why we're going to take the noise out. so that it's less horrible. And then we're going to add noise over everything so that it actually looks decent. Okay, so I'm going to take that noise out here for a minute. And here after our time speed, bring this up here in the left viewer. And let's just take off our gain and gamma. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint over this so that we don't see a reflection using the paint node. And this time for apply controls, we're going to go to clone for apply mode. And then up here, we're going to do single brush like this. And under our brush controls, let's take the size down a lot more apparently. There we go. Make sure that you have the paint node selected while you're working on it, or else it'll do weird stuff. And I can hold down Alt to capture a piece of the clip, and then we can kind of just paint over it like this. And we're just going to paint out that reflection, holding Alt and just kind of grabbing the edges here, getting rid of those extra parts. Just trying to take this part out. There we go. Also going to check still source and take this time at 168 just for good measure. So now the entire time we should have that reflection gone. Then we're cutting it out like this. And then we're pasting it over our reflection like that. And it should be pretty decent. Okay. So when you zoom in crazy like this, you can sort of notice that it's a little weird. Part of this is going to be helped with the noise reduction and regraining the whole thing, but I think it'll work for now. So let's put a good reflection back in. I'm going to go to the media pool, and here under VFX Bakes, we have our Jedi standing.png. Let's grab this. I'll hit 2 on the keyboard just to bring him up. And I'm just going to very roughly draw a mask around him. I'm going to turn off the mask here and just do something like this. Make a really soft mask. Turn that back on. Let's just soften that edge. And this is the most hack job. Oh my goodness. But guess what? It's going to work great. Okay. We're going to take this and let's go ahead and just merge this over before we do the reference track. So I'll bring this over here. Let's add a merge. We're going to merge this in like this with a transform after it. So we'll just kind of do it this way. Let's take a look at this merge. Let's take the size down on our Jedi, and we're going to put him here in the reflection. Let's see our media out. Kind of make some room here. We're just going to put him in wherever we want. I'll just line him up the horizon a little bit. We'll move him over, maybe make him a little smaller, so we can see him in the distance. That works. Let's just align him roughly here. And we're going to do a little bit of color correction also. So I'll grab this after media in. Let's just add a color corrector here. And I'm just going to take the gain down. And that should just about match because it's the same environment and everything. Somewhere in there, I want to make sure I go over to options and click pre-divide post-multiply. That's going to make it so when I push this lift up, it doesn't do anything stupid. I'll just push this up a little bit and kind of just match this. There we have our guy, little reflection of our guy. And if we play this back, he should be stuck there in the background and it should look pretty good. Okay, looking pretty good. And we can do whatever we want. We can add anything to this reflection. And at this point, he's going to have a blue lightsaber. So let's go ahead and add a blue lightsaber. We're just going to do that with a background node. And we're going to make it cyan like this. And again, merge this over here. Things are getting wily. So let's do some rearranging here. Take all this down here. It's actually going to help if we move everything to the right a lot. So we can kind of build our node structure from left to right. We'll have things coming in from the top like this. There we go. Things are going to start making any sense at all. Starting now. Start labeling things. This is going to be Jedi MI. Jedi mask. This background is going to be cyan. BG. And let's do a polygon mask here. And I've set my polygon to default as turned off because I almost always want it turned off when I start drawing with it. But in this case, I'm going to turn it back on. By the way, to set a tool's default, all you have to do is just set your settings how you want, and then right click here on the name here in the inspector and go down to settings, save default. For masks, I've done a couple things. One is I've turned off the switch to start out with, and I've also gotten rid of the shape animation because I usually don't want either of those. So that's really helpful. But here we're just going to draw a little line where his lightsaber is going to be. So starting there, then going to there, and then we're going to push up the border width just a touch. So look at that. Now he has a lightsaber, and it's so far away you can't tell that that lightsaber isn't great, right? Let's soften that edge just a touch like this. And we're going to make a similar background here. We're going to do the same thing, cyan background. I'm going to hit Control C and Control V. And this background, we're going to make this a white background like this. And merge that over. Rename white BG. This time we're going to not soften it, and we're going to take the border width up just so we can definitely see that. Push this up a little bit. Okay. So now we have just a little bit of glow here. Yeah, look at that. That looks so cool. So now he's holding a lightsaber in that reflection. Isn't that awesome? And this all goes through that track, and so everything will stay where it's supposed to be. So sweet. Okay. The last thing we need to do is put the water drips back over this because it looks weird that there's no water drips here and they're kind of everywhere else. And so I played around with a lot of different ways to do this. One thing that you could do would be to just kind of clone this over here, and that might work. You might be able to do something like take a transform node and run this original footage into that transform node, merge it over everything, and then just take that transform and just kind of move it down a little bit, but then mask it to where you only see it within this little circle, that moved down version. And we can put a little circle over our guy here, over our patch. And we could kind of transform this footage under that circle, like looking through that window. And we can get those drips, and they should move pretty much the same way that the rest of the face moves. And if we play this back, it's going to move almost exactly the same. The only thing we'll have to do is apply the tracking data to this window, which we could copy and paste this reference track here. And we could put this mask into the foreground of the reference track like this. Grab this, go to operation and say foreground only. And that's going to move that mask around with us. So we have that kind of over everything. And then we soften the mask. And we do something like a brightness and contrast here on this to really kind of make this black and white, like really boost up that white a little bit. And then do something like multiply this over. And so we can kind of get that stuff multiplied over. I could take the saturation down, and that's going to give us those drips over our guy in a really similar way. And that could work. So here's before and here's after. We're just kind of adding those drips in. I feel like that's kind of just a lot of work that it's just okay. And so what I ended up doing before was, I'm just going to get rid of all of that. What I ended up doing before was just making a background, and we're just going to make this a clear background, and then adding a polygon mask to it like this. Turn that on. And then I just drew in the drips because we're just going to kind of draw some drips in here, push up the border width a little bit, and we can kind of just make these black drips like this. I'll just copy and paste this polygon, and I can get rid of this and just make something else, you know, copy, paste, selecting all these, getting rid of it. You know, and then kind of same thing. You can just multiply this and then take the blend down and it's going to look similar, right? Soften this a little bit, soften these edges. So we have those drips kind of going over our guy again, right? So here's before and here's after, just drawing in those drips. Depends on what you want to do. Kind of depends on what you think. One thing I think I'll do is I'll do a better track on the surface of this reflection. So again, I'll just make a tracker. I'll take this original footage and drop it into it. We'll just put a tracker on some of this stuff here. Then I'll put another tracker here just so we can get the actual movement of the reflection instead of the background. And let's track that back and forth. Okay, there's one. There's one side and then up here towards the beginning. Great. And now we can use this tracker as a merge, basically. Select this tracker under operation, we'll say match move, foreground over background. Under our apply mode, we'll go to multiply. And then under settings, we'll take the blend down. This will do a similar thing. Very similar to what we were doing. I'm going to soften this edge a little bit. Just taking this blend down a little bit. Just so it matches. And now we play this back. Ooh, that's kind of being weird. Looks like our track is a little jumpy. So I'm actually going to get rid of this other track. Let's go ahead and reset this track. And let's just do a 1-point track here on our reflection. Tracker operation, we'll do match move, multiply. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so now we have that movement and it's working pretty well. And I'm just going to blend that down to look a little bit more decent. And move these over a little bit so it's right in front of our guy. Blend this down a little more just so we don't notice it somewhere in there. So here's before and here's after, just a little bit of that. And that moves along with our other lines. So it's already getting a lot better. Then we take this noise reduction, we reduce the noise, then we're going to add the noise back in. And you can just use this grain effect. And a great way to dial this in is bring up the original footage in the left viewer, zoom way in to what we're looking at here. So we're going to take the grain size down a little bit, take the power way down, change the red difference a little bit, the blue difference a little bit, that size down a lot to where we're getting something that's similar. Make sure these are the exact same size and they should feel very, very similar. Okay. And now we have this nice little, before and after shot of here's before and here's after. Everything should make sense. Beautiful. The only thing left is to do kind of a similar workflow here for this lightsaber, which I will leave you to do on your own. But it's a matter of tracking this, making a still, and cloning this out, and then putting a new lightsaber in here, which is basically how we did this blue lightsaber. Same thing, just a mask on a red background, and then a similar mask on a white background. I mean, this almost works as a lightsaber as it is. So anyway, we're going to call that decent for now, just because this video is so long. It's so crazy. Okay. And let's switch to this shot where we have our guys running with their lightsabers and our little droid friend. Okay. I'll go ahead and get rid of our extra notes here and just switch into Fusion. Now we have a nice new shot. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use that same technique of making a colored solid and a white solid and putting just a line mask over each of them. And we're going to do that for this whole shot, and we're going to animate it to just cover up these toy lightsabers, and it's going to work pretty well. So I'm going to zoom in our work area here, and I'm just going to make a background like this. And let's make this cyan. Call this cyan_BG. And we'll take our polygon mask and connect it. This time I am going to have our shape animation. This is how yours will probably come up by default. But we're just going to start at frame 48. And guess what? I'm just going to do a couple points here. And I'm not going to close this shape like this. I'm just going to draw a line, 2 points like that. And then I'm going to boost up this border width to where we have a pretty nice looking cyan saber here. And this is going to be good enough to animate. Now, I'm going to switch to my fourth tool over, which is just a modify only tool. That means that if I click off of this, it doesn't want to draw another point, which is misery. So now I can just select these, I can box select them and move things around without there being a big problem. Okay, let's take this border width down a little bit because I want this to be pretty reasonable. And there's a little bit of motion blur here. I'm going to put this in between that motion blur, and then down here at the bottom, we're going to just put this right at the hilt of the lightsaber like this, again, in the center of this line. Okay. Now I'm going to go forward until this changes a lot. And so it's generally going over and to the right, but here's where it starts changing. So we're just going to go all the way to like here. Select all of these and move them over. Again, in between the lines, so something like this. And now, in between this, because the movement in real life isn't perfectly linear like it would be when you're keyframing stuff, it's not going to be totally accurate. In fact, it's going to be pretty far off, but it is going to be somewhat close. And I will have to do slightly less work to move things around if I do each side, the beginning and the end, and then go to the middle like this. And then I'm going to go to the middle of these keyframes. So I have a keyframe here, and I'm going to go towards the middle like this. And that's going to be relatively close. I'm going to move this over to where it should be like that. And then as I kind of get more and more granular, this is going to be a little bit closer. So again, it's just going to be slightly less work. Might as well do slightly less work if you can. And we'll just move this to where it's supposed to be. And sometimes you'll get lucky and you won't even have to put a keyframe on these in-between frames because they're close enough. But this one we're going to be cool. Make sure everything's good. And I'm just going to walk through this step by step, hitting the left and right brackets on the keyboard. So here we go, just in between. I'm not worrying that it's not completely covering stuff. It's not that big a deal. There's going to be so much going on. Nobody's ever going to know or care. That's the name of the game here. We're getting away with murder here. That's the plan. Now again, kind of in between this 56 and 65, that's where we're going to put this up. Move this forward a couple frames and we're just going to go through this. So I'm going to go through the rest of this. We're going to speed it up with the power of editing. And then once this starts to really change, I'm just going to do the same process over again. Just going to go through here, do this, and then I'm going to go through until the main big movement is done. So I don't know, something like that. And then again, kind of go back towards the middle of those keyframes. And things are just easier this way. You never want to go step by step, like keyframe and then keyframe the next one, because you'll always just be doing more work than you need to. Because like I said, you might get lucky and get something really close. See, this one's almost right. It's really close, but there should be some minimal tweaking needed. And there just becomes less and less work. Okay, here's this. And I'm pretty sure we don't even see this frame because that's the end frame. Last frame is 76. Okay, so now we have this roughly animated over that lightsaber. And we'll call this Jedi Saber Mask, like that. And now we're going to do some trickiness, okay? Let's take this cyan background. I'll hit Control-C, double-click off and hit Control-V. And we're just going to make this white. And I'll rename this white_BG. And just merge this over our cyan background like that. And we can take this same mask and just apply it to the white, and that would work. The only problem is that it completely covers our cyan. And so instead of doing that, we're going to copy the mask, Control-C, double click off and hit Control-Shift-V. And that's going to paste an instance, which I can connect. And there are linked properties here that I can unlink so that I can change just one aspect of this, but it still shares everything else. And so I want to unlink, I want to de-instance the soft edge and the border width. Okay. So I can make the white softer or harder or a different size than the cyan. So the cyan will probably just push up the soft edge a little bit and just let this glow. And we'll just do a little bit of a soft edge with the white. And I mean, it's looking pretty good. I think we'll make this width just a little bigger for the cyan, a little bit bigger for the white. And like there's some frames where you can kind of see the blur kind of behind it, but for the most part, it works pretty well. Now, we do want to add motion blur to this. And the way that we can do that is if we go into our mask, we can go to settings and click on motion blur and check this out. Oh, it's doing it. It's doing it. We're going to boost up the quality a lot and adjust that shutter angle to just cover that lightsaber. And that's going to give us a pretty good motion blur for our lightsaber. This might be a little big now that I look at it. Let's take that border width down just a touch. But now he moves with that lightsaber and we have that nice motion blur. The only problem is that it gets a little bit dark when it's motion blurred, and lightsabers should be very bright, ridiculously bright. So one thing we can do is just make this white background whiter. So I can go to this white, and then instead of 1, 1, 1, let's do 3, 3, 3. That's going to give that this nice solid white when it's doing that motion blur. We're going to have that nice kind of arc when he swings the lightsaber. There we go. Cool. And that's going to give us kind of a basic lightsaber look. And we could do a lot of stuff to make this even crazier. For instance, we could take this and add some like displacement to it. We could say Shift space and then DSP for displacement. And let's plug some fast noise into the green input of the displace. Fast noise is going to make clouds, which is going to drive the displacement. So I can push up the detail a little bit, push down the scale a lot. And then this displacement, if we push up this refraction strength, take down the offset, it's going to make this a little bit more violent and crackly, which I think is pretty cool. So we can change this refraction strength and kind of mess with that a little bit. Let's mess with this on X and Y, and let's just do X refraction a little bit more. Take that offset. We can just kind of adjust that refraction, which is kind of neat. And that's going to kind of uncover our background a little bit, but that might be something we want to do that just kind of gives that a little bit more organic of a feel, you know? Gives a little bit more organic feel, which is kind of cool. Depending on what kind of lightsaber you want, you can do that. All kinds of stuff to do there. Now, for our Sith, it's pretty much the exact same process, okay? The one thing that we'll do is we'll make his blade a little bit longer because this is a play sword and it's kind of dinky. But similar process. Let's take a white background and let's make this one red. I'll put this over here. Put our polygon on top. Let's just start this back here. Make this a little bit longer. Make sure that we have our shape animation on, and let's push up the border width a little bit so we can see the saber. Make sure to rename this red BG. Then we can go through kind of the same idea, going until there's a major change, which is like right there. We'll take that back a little bit, and we're just gonna move this into place. And we're gonna fast forward through this because it's pretty much the same idea. Okay, there's the main movement of the saber. Control-C, Control-Shift-V. Plug this into white and merge the white over the red like this. De-instance soft edge and our border width. Push up the border width on the red. Soft edge. Border width on the white. Soft edge. And we'll make sure to turn on motion blur. Quality 10. And that white works pretty good. Yeah, Cool. Say maybe make this red just a little bit more intense. Yeah, I like that. So these look pretty bright for the environment, but I think we're going to darken this down a little bit, and we might adjust them later, but I think it works pretty well. Might want to do the same displace here for the red one. I'll bring the same fast noise into it. See how that looks. Yeah, looks cool. Just changes that a little bit. Yes. So sweet. Pretty easy, actually, pretty easy. It's just basically coloring over the image with that red background and the white background, and it works pretty well. Now, when these clash together, I want there to be kind of a big flash of light. That's sort of a thing. The studio version of Resolve has a flare effect, which is quite good. And so you can just kind of move this lens flare here, and I like to use mirror, and we'll just bring this down a touch. And we're just going to take the global corrections and push up the global brightness a little bit. And that glare brightness, take that down a little. Boost up the anamorphism a little bit. Boost up that brightness so it should be really bright. This is just going to be for a second. Maybe even push the scaling up a little bit. I mean, it gets kind of ridiculous. And this isn't quite bright enough, and that can be because of the color management stuff. And this is probably something we can adjust here in the color page. We don't need to get totally crazy in Fusion, but I think something like that, where these hit together and there's a big flash. We could take this lens flare, and we're going to animate the brightness here. So global brightness, let's keyframe this here at frame 76, and then the frame before, we'll just take this all the way down to 0. So it's like, boom, hits real quick, like that. And there's a great big flare, and that's going to work pretty well. So that is our end shot. Guys running at each other. Shabam! That works cool. And so those are our lightsabers. One thing we didn't do yet is add our droid. So let's go over to our media pool, go to VFX Bakes, and we're going to say droid 2. I'll just grab this guy and drag him in, and then we'll merge him over, but before the lens flare. And let's rename this droid. And put a transform after him and size him down like this. Let's make sure that the timing is right. Looks like it's going to work out just fine. Let's put him roughly where we want him to be, which is going to be just behind our guy. And let's size him roughly how we want to size him, which is probably something like this. Okay. And before we even do the transform, we're going to kind of cut him out. So I'll hit 2 on the keyboard just to bring him up like this. I'll bring up my delta keyer. I just grab this background color like this, hit 2 on the keyboard. That's just going to get rid of our background. I'll hit A for alpha, and this is going to show us our actual matte. So even though it sort of looks good, we can see from our matte, which we want to be totally black and white, that there's a bunch of gray in here. So we can go over to matte. Let's just take this threshold, and I'm going to push up the bottom part to black, push the down part to where we have just a white silhouette of our guy. That's kind of what we're looking for. And I'm only really worried about this edge right here. Everything down here we're going to worry about later, but that looks good. I'll hit A, and then if I hit 2 for media out, we can see this edge looks pretty nice. This is, I think, going to work. But a couple things we want to do is here under replace mode for our matte, we don't want soft color, we want source. That's going to get rid of a lot of the noise and junk that the delta keyer puts in. And then we're just going to grab a polygon mask, and I'm going to right click and drag and connect this to our garbage matte and turn this on. And I'm just going to basically select all the parts that I don't really want to include, which is going to be kind of everything on that side. That's going to sort of crop this. Let's push a soft edge into here. It's going to give us a nice soft edge down here. I can actually kind of bring this in a little bit more, and we'll get rid of this little edge here too. I'll just make another mask. There's a bunch of ways to do this, but this will be quick. We'll just make another mask, and I'll just kind of cut that out with a soft edge too. There's a little bit there that we could probably do a better job on, but again, you can take 100 hours on this. Okay, same thing, soft edge, just get rid of that. Okay. The other way you could do this is kind of trace out the rest of his body and put that in as a separate layer. That works too, but this is going to be just fine. So now we drag this in and just about almost works how it is. I'm gonna grab this and kind of adjust this mask to where we don't see any edges. And I mean, it works pretty well. It works pretty well. It looks like he's standing there and you just can't be too mad about it. And like the lighting works and everything. If you look carefully, like grass is a different size and everything, but at the same time, it's like nobody's really gonna notice. We could do a little bit more cleanup on the grass and everything, but again, you go ahead and do that. It looks like he's there though. That works pretty well. So we got our handsome boy in here, a little droid. It's looking pretty good. Switch back to our edit, and I think that's looking pretty sweet. Could even kind of move this guy over a little bit, be right next to him. Yeah, so cool. We could do a replace on this guy. I mean, you could do all kinds of stuff here. We could add AT-ATs in the background. That'd be fun. So feel free to go crazy with this footage. I mean, you can download it and play around. And then we have one more shot here, and this is quite a bit of work. We have two different lightsabers here. We have to clone out this blade right here. We have to clone out me. We have to get rid of this lightsaber and animate the handle flying in and him catching it. We have to erase all of that. And there's a focus rack. So it starts sharp in the background and then moves towards the foreground. And we're going to put in our droid. Plus we have both of the lightsabers turning on. We're going to add smoke to the foreground lightsaber. There's a ton of work here. And this video is plenty long, I would say. So let me know if you want to see a step-by-step process of compositing this clip, and we can do something in the future. But for now, I'm going to cut to the finished clip with the power of movie magic. And I just recorded an entire course on this because, dude, there's a lot to do here, way deeper than we can go in this video. But if you're interested in seeing how we did it, comment below and let me know, and we're going to make that course available very soon. But for now, we have all of our visual effects in here. And so I'm just going to select all of these text and everything and delete them. Right click over here in the track headers, and let's just say delete empty tracks. That'll kind of clean things up a bit. And just because I'm pretty sure all of these effects are going to work, I'm going to go ahead and render all of these in place. Now, this is optional. We can also just let Fusion cache and kind of just think about this. But once we get into color, it's annoying to kind of run into problems playing back with Fusion. And so I like to just right click on any of these Fusion clips after I'm done with them and go up to render in place. And this will render a high quality video and it will replace it in the timeline. And what's cool is if we need to adjust something, we can restore the original Fusion composition. So that's pretty cool. So let's go to codec DNX HR, and I'm just gonna go DNX HR 444 12-bit. Let's not include the color grading effects. That sounds good, and I'll hit render. I'm gonna make a new folder here in my work files, and I'll call it render in place. And I'll just put my renders here. And I'm gonna go through and just render each of these in place. It'll just take a few minutes to go through and do that. And then our playback and basically the rest of our life is going to be so much smoother. Let's Batman transition to that, shall we? Okay, so everything has been rendered in place. I'm going to get rid of these markers here and here. So now everything plays back so easily and nicely. Oh, baby, it's so great. So we have all of our effects in there. Now it's time to get into the sound design, which you can do in Fairlight. You just switch over to Fairlight. And here in our media pool, we've already imported some audio stuff. And we have quite a few sound effects and all kinds of stuff that is included in the work files. But because Fairlight is not quite my jam, I invited a friend. Jason just did a huge video on creating the sound design for this entire project. Everything from doing EQ to adding and editing sound effects, all the sounds for the lightsabers, setting up buses, optimizing the volume, dealing with loudness and all of that stuff. This guy's just freaking brilliant. And if you're into audio, there are no better videos on the internet for Fairlight than Jason Yadlovski. So if you want to learn some Fairlight goodness, make sure to check out Jason's video right there. But he was nice enough to do all the sound design for this and then just send me the timeline. So here I have a timeline from Jason with all of our music and our sound effects and everything in here. He put a ton of work into this. So let's just listen to this for the audio, not the visuals.
I'm here for the droid!
Come and take it.
That's awesome. That's freaking awesome. That sounds amazing. So this is sweet. I love that. I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of this timeline. I'm going to right click, say duplicate timeline, and we'll call this for render. Don't call it final. I'll drag this to the master here. And in our for render timeline, we're going to replace all of our visuals here with our final visuals from our other timeline. So I'll just go up here to our little timeline drop down and select timeline 1, which I did not rename because I'm a professional. Let's grab all these visuals. I'm just holding Alt, Control C, and go over to our for render timeline. And I'm just going to get rid of all of these upper things because I really just want these clips here. So we're just going to move this up. I'm going to hold Alt, select this and hit Alt and up a couple times like that. Then I'll hit Control V. That'll paste those in at the exact same time. I'll hold down Alt and select just the video part here and hit D to disable these. So now, everything should look beautiful and it should sound good too. Cool, this looks great. I'm gonna go ahead and delete my temporary stuff here, making sure I'm holding Alt and just selecting the video tracks and not this audio track here. And we are good to jump into color. This is so exciting. Man, I love having other people do audio. That was great. Let's switch over to the color page. And here we are in the color page. So I'm going to close my timeline just because we don't probably need that. I'm just gonna use these clips and let's resize this. And because we have our color management all set up, we can really just kind of get started working here. The one thing that I am going to do is I'm going to start with a look. So whatever the final look that we want for our project is, that's kind of what we're going to figure out first. And you want to figure that out on a shot that is representative of the entire project. And so I would say this one has all the elements that we're looking for. And I'm just going to start off by going over here to my nodes and just switching to the timeline nodes. You could also do this within a group if you want to, but because we just have this collection of shots here, it's not going to hurt to put it in the timeline. I'll hit Alt S to add a serial node, and I'm going to use the brand new film look creator in Resolve 19. So under effects here, we'll search for film look creator. This is only available in the paid version of Resolve, which I would highly recommend getting that just for, if no other reason, this is a really great tool, okay? So this film look creator is going to help us figure out a kind of filmic style here. And by default, if we just take the effects all the way down and the color all the way down, you see there's nothing going on here. And as we turn on the color, even before we adjust anything, it's adding a look in there. In fact, even if I reset everything and go to default no effects, there's still some color work that it's doing here. And I do like what it's doing. It's kind of pushing up the contrast a little bit. It's taking that saturation down. It's being kind of selective with the color palette. And man, it just looks pretty good out of the box. So we're gonna kind of refine this a little bit. Let's turn off our clips just so we have a little more room. Can probably turn off our nodes for now because we're just working in one node. And I'll just scroll in here so we can see all of our elements all at once. And this film look creator by default is going to use our timeline color space, which we have set up in our color management here, which is DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, which is perfect for this sort of thing. And the first thing I'm going to do is look at this and say, okay, what do I want to be different? One thing is I'll probably take the exposure down just a little bit because I want this to be overall kind of a darker look. So I think darker like this. I feel like I want to punch these greens and make them a little bit more kind of bluish. And I wonder if some of that can happen from our split tone and maybe even our subtractive saturation. So I'm going to push that up just a touch, maybe push our contrast just a touch. Then let's go to split tone. Let's enable the split tone. And I'm just going to push this all the way up just to see if it's crazy sauce. And it kind of gives us this teal and orange sort of look, which doesn't work really well for what we're doing. But if we take this down a lot and we just push a little bit into it, that's going to give us a little bit of richness here that might be good. Let's just take this off and on. So now the question is, do we like what it's doing? It's adding a little bit of warmth to the highlights here. Let's also adjust the pivot maybe a little bit. And as we adjust the pivot, more things become teal or orange. So I think we'll push this up just a little bit, just to push this a little bit towards the teal side. So that's kind of tealing things out a little bit. And I think that looks pretty sweet. I might just take this amount down a little more. It's always good to kind of do what you think looks good and then just dial it back a little. You can always push more in later if you want to, but starting subtle I think is a good move. So here's without it and here's with it. That looks pretty nice. Also curious to see what halation looks like here. Let's click on some halation. Halation is sort of like a glow in the highlights of things. So let's just push that up a lot. And you can kind of see it here in the skin. There's like a little glow. See that little thing? And it's subtle, and it's supposed to be subtle. But I do like that. I think that looks pretty good. Now, we might revisit that later on other shots and realize that we don't like it. I like what it's doing to the lightsaber here. Okay, something like that. And I do want to add a little bit of grain here. I'll enable the grain, and let's do preset 65mm. That just gives us a little bit smaller grain here. That looks pretty sweet. And then there's some other stuff like flicker and gate weave and everything. I don't really want to deal with that. I don't think we need any of that. And I mean, without a lot of work, this is a pretty nice look. I would say maybe it's just a little heavy on the split tone. Maybe take the pivot down just a touch. So here's before and here's after. Now let's see if this is doing what we want on the other shots. Now, we might need to adjust the other shots under this look, but let's see if we have any kind of good thing happening here. So here, this one's obviously too dark. So we could switch to our nodes, go over to clip, and let's just boost up this offset a little bit. Just boost this up to make a little bit more sense. See, something like that I think works pretty well. Maybe we can take the offset down on this one a little bit, make it a little darker, kind of match those, okay? Same thing here. I'm going to middle button mouse click on shot 3 to copy this to shot 5 with shot 5 selected. That's clicking down on the scroll wheel of my mouse. Okay, shot 4, we want to match roughly to this shot. And so that means that a lot of it's going to have to go down, but I don't want it too dark right here. And so I'm going to push the offset up a little bit, actually, to keep some of this detail here. And we're going to add another serial node and probably just like a soft circle window here. And we'll switch this to outside, take the offset down a little bit for everything else. Now it's going to be hard to get him to not look like he's glowing. So we'll just soften this a little bit. Something like that. That's going to do a pretty good job here. So here's before and here's after. So the question is, does it match with these? It looks pretty good. It's all kind of this tealish green look. This shot 2, we want to match with this. So I'm thinking exposure needs to come up a little bit and maybe the saturation down a touch. So do those look similar? Yeah, looks pretty good to me. Okay. And then this one here needs to be similar too. One thing we can do is right click on a shot as we're on it and say grab still. And then we can go up here to the upper left and click on this image wipe. And that will load the image as a split screen that we can compare things to. So we'll just take this down here, and why not? We'll kind of match it up. And with this shot selected, I can do some adjustment here in my offset, maybe boost this exposure a touch. Something maybe more like that. That's looking a little better. Okay, I'll turn off that wipe. And let's just play this back and see what we think. See if this is working. I'll turn off the loop and hit Control F. Let's play this back. Just going to do it without any sound just so we can really focus on the visuals here. And I'm just looking at everything. If there's anything major, any big things I don't like. Looks pretty sweet. This looks pretty sweet. I would say that this shot maybe looks a little too bright. This one looks good. That one looks good. Okay. Yeah, I would say this shot looks just a little bright. So let's take the exposure down a touch here. Just rolling down on my scroll wheel over the master wheel of my offset. And I'll just hit back and forth on the keyboard. And that's actually just going one frame to the right and one frame to the left. But because I'm on the very beginning frame of this shot, if I hit left, it'll go to the end frame of that shot. So it's kind of a little trick. Because if I just were to hit up and down, it's going to show me the beginning of each shot. So if we go left and right, that works. And I think this one's still maybe a little bright. So we'll do something like that. It's looking pretty good. I love the flicker of the lightsaber. That just really adds to it. Feels good. As I kind of go through here, these should all make sense. I would say this one maybe just feels a little bit too kind of yellowish green. And the sky feels a little bit yellowish green too. So we might just take the temperature and just pull it to the left a little bit just to see. That feels better. Does this match with this? Yeah, much better. So we can really get a really great look and match our shots together by using a couple things. One is the film look creator here. If you don't have the free version of Resolve, you can build your own look with a series of nodes and stuff. If you guys want to learn more about that, let me know. But that film look creator is really sweet. Adds a bunch of stuff all in one node. So easy. Really, really great tool in Resolve 19. And so we have that look over everything. And so without the look, these look, kind of normal. And they still match a little better, actually, under that look. Might not be a waste of time to go through and just kind of roughly match things just with the color management on before we even put our look on there. But the look definitely makes everything match, looks nice, and is more of a representation of what this is actually going to look like. And then it's just a matter of going through and especially adjusting just this offset, the exposure. That's like the biggest thing that will make shots not match, is just if they're different brightness. And so this seems to work pretty well. Okay. And we can stop there if we want to. I mean, that's good. That's a nice look, and it's subtle, and it's great. Let's dig in just like one level deep of adjusting things a little bit. I'm going to go back to my clips here. And I would say right here, I just want to give a little bit more brightness to him. So again, we're just going to do a circle window here, and I'll just put this here and make it really soft right there. And then again, we'll just push up the offset. You can do so much stuff just with offset. Okay, so here's before and after. Just really gives him just a little bit more exposure there. Can maybe even take just the gain up a touch. There we go. And I don't think this moves around that much. It'd probably be fine. So yeah, we'll add a little bit there. Seems to work pretty well. And when this lightsaber turns on, we should really have some light here. And so let's see if we can do something. And I'm just going to do this the really cheap way and just add a little bit of a mask here on the edge of his hand. Let's first of all just see if we can make it look good. So let's just take the offset over a little bit more blue, maybe take the gain up a little bit, and we'll soften the inside and the outside of this. We'll just soften this around his hand like this, just so it kind of fades out over the contours of his hand, like that. Just have that fade out. Okay, switch to curves just so we can see that a little better. Let's move this over a touch. I'm gonna get rid of some of these points because I feel like we're just making this too complicated. There we go. We just want to select the part that's kind of facing the lightsaber a little more, and we'll just really fade this out. As long as we keep it really soft, it's pretty good. Let's take the gain up just a touch. Maybe take the gain a little bit more cyan. That's looking kind of weird. Let's just take the key output gain. That's this third icon over. Halfway down, there's key output. This is like the opacity of that node. And so I can kind of just adjust that a little bit, like 0.6 maybe. Just see how that looks. kind of fade this out a little more. Nice and subtle. Now let's go ahead and track that. We'll go over to our tracker window and just track this forward like that. And then here we'll track this backward. And we really only need it after it turns on, which is going to be right about there. And so right here, we're going to have that start. And to kind of keyframe that, we're going to go back to our key output gain, and we're going to switch over to our keyframes right here. And this is corrector 3. And so I'm going to go here to this little diamond and turn that on. And that's going to add a keyframe to whatever I mess with, basically right here at this frame. So I'm going to take the gain and just adjust that a little bit. That's going to add a keyframe here. And then I'm going to go one frame to the left where the lightsaber isn't on. I'm going to take this output gain and just turn it all the way down. Okay, so basically this node is turning on right there. Let's just see how that looks. Okay, here's some real light that's getting put on him. And so we can see how this looks as far as a reference. So I'll just grab this still and let's go here and play our still. And if we go over to sizing, this fifth little icon here, you can adjust the sizing and everything of your reference. And so I can push this over the pan like this. And we're just going to look to make this light on his hand look like this light on his neck. Okay, so one thing is the light on his hand is a little bit less cyan and a little bit more blue. Let's take this just a little more blue like that. That's looking pretty good. Maybe we can take the gamma down a touch. Yeah, so it's just a little bit more kind of lighty. Let's just adjust this a little bit. I actually think I'm going to draw this a little differently. Let's go ahead and reset this. Just get rid of our power curve here. And I'll reset my power curve here. And let's just select the parts that are going to be facing down pretty much. And we'll adjust the inside softness here, the outside softness a little bit, and just kind of fade this out along where that light would be hitting and kind of falling off. Now you might be asking, why aren't you just doing this with the Relight plugin? My guess is that it's not going to be this exact. You're absolutely welcome to try it yourself if you want to, but that looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Let's take this down a little bit here. Yeah, definitely get that idea happening. We're going to go ahead and track this back and forth. And we really only need this on after he turns on the light. So we're going to turn it on probably right there. Again, we're going to take our key output gain, grab our color corrector, move this, and then go one over, turn that gain all the way down. And then I'm going to turn off that keyframe thing because that'll just get you in trouble. Yes. Make sure we don't have a keyframe on our color corrector here. So it stays the same the whole time. Defocus is also doing a bad job. Boy. Here is where we want it on. We'll adjust our keyframe and we'll take this down to something reasonable. So like 0.564. And then one frame to the left, we'll turn this all the way down. So now it's, yes. Oh, so good. So now we have that coming in. And then it's lighting on his hand a little bit more, which I think really helps this. You could also add some light here and to his arm and everything. Feel free to go crazy on that, but you get the idea. Let's see what else we want to do here. I'd say maybe brighten up this helmet just a little bit. I'll just hit Alt-P and make a parallel node. That's just because I'm going to kind of mix these corrections together a little bit. And I just want them to play nicely together. So we'll just grab his helmet here. I'll hit Control-T to track this. Not much movement, but go with that. And now we can adjust something like our offset and push that up. We can just see in the helmet a little better. I think that looks a little bit more natural, a little easier. I would say maybe just a touch of contrast. There we go. So here's before and here's after. I get a little bit of love. And again, in VFX, you might want to replace this with the lightsaber, but it's cool. It's cool. Next, this looks good. On this shot, maybe we want to do something with the sky. I feel like the sky is just maybe a little too bright. And so let's grab a gradient window and maybe put this down like this and just take the offset down again. Yeah, I feel like that just stops blooming the trees so much. Looks a little more natural. That's going to help. That looks nice. I would say, for whatever reason, our droid, he looks a little bit bright. And I know he's probably not, but if he looks a little bright, let's just take him down a touch. It's real easy to do. Just go ahead and do just kind of a quick mask on him. Something like that. And we'll just take the offset down a touch. Oh yeah, I think that works. Soften it just a little. If we turn this off and on, we shouldn't see some big problem. That looks good. I'm pretty sure he's just standing there. Yep. So that looks good. Just taking him down just to not be so bright. That seems to work a little better. Yeah, sits him in there just a little better. We could probably do a similar thing on this other shot. So here, I feel like he's maybe just a touch bright. I do another serial node. I could do a parallel node here. What I'm doing isn't going to interact. Like nothing's crossing in front of him. I'm not doing any work in another window that's going to kind of cross over our droid that much. And so I'm not that worried about doing that. But yeah, let's do just a real basic shape around our dude. This is going to be a pretty blurry shape. Let's just make this really pink so we can really see what we're doing. I'm going to soften this a little bit. That's just going to kind of blur my matte. I'll redo my offset here. And let's just take it down a touch. There we go. So here's before, here's after. Just taking him down, adding a little bit more of those shadows. Could probably take it down even more. Yeah. Just making him sit in there a little bit more. Feels a little more realistic. Feels like he's less like he's pasted on there. It's really cool to be able to do like part of this in Fusion and then part of this in color, because there's so many easy things you can do in the color page and just fix little problems that might take a little bit longer to fix in Fusion. Really nice. Okay. So we can keep tweaking this forever, but we're going to call this done. So this looks really great. We're going to give this one final watch through and make sure we like it.
I'm here.
Right here, I think that what we just did is messing this up a little bit. Let's look. Yeah. It's like, especially here in the grass, it's like darkening that grass more than it should. So one thing we could do would be to just adjust this and move this up a little bit, so it's not so dark on that grass. Just get rid of a lot of these things here. Okay. There's definitely a little bit more work we could do here. This is a really challenging shot because the focus moves a little bit and this kind of slips a little bit when we have that moving focus. And so how to fix that would be probably just to move this over a little bit as it gets blurry. That would probably fix a lot of that, but that's okay. You can fix that on yours, right? Okay, let's look at this.
I'm here for the droid.
Come and take it.
That reflection looks good. That's cool. This lightsaber looks yellow. That's probably because of the halation. Let's look. Yeah. So like I said, there's probably, so for some things that are bright, it works really well. And some things it kind of does that. So one thing we could do would be just to break out the halation and just have it not over the blue. We could also put just the lightsaber into a media out in the fusion page, and then we can use this as a matte to kind of hold it out. I don't care that much about the halation, so I'm just going to turn the halation off. And I think it's going to fix a lot of problems, and it just won't be that big a deal. So yeah, because with that halation on, a lot of the time it's fine, but right here especially, makes that, it does help this lightsaber a little bit, but it's fine. And the one last thing I might do is just add a little bit of brightness to this flash here. Again, let's just Alt-S to make a serial node, and I'm just gonna put a circle node right here. Make it really, really soft. Just boost the gain a little bit. Just so this is a little bit brighter. Maybe we'll even make this kind of purplish because it's the blue and the red coming together. And yeah, we're going to animate that key output gain here too. So this is corrector 5, and I'll turn on the keyframe there and then just wiggle it to add the keyframe. Go left 1 frame and turn that gain all the way down. And then make sure to turn off this auto keyframe like this. Yeah. That looks a lot better. So before, after. Yay. Fixing stuff in color. Okay. This looks sick. One thing is I think we forgot to add the blur. We forgot to blur this guy. He's just a little bit too sharp. Again, we could go back to Fusion, but I think what we'll do is just add a little blur to the existing matte we have. I'll just push that up a little. Look how easy that is. Add a touch of a blur. Yep, that's the difference. I think that works a little bit better. It sits him back into the environment a little more. I think this one's fine. Let's take a look.
You're late.
I'm here for the droid!
Come and take it.
This project has been so much fun. We had a blast making this, and hey, if you want more videos like this, please let me know and we'll make more films and make more big free courses like this. And if you haven't already, make sure to download those media files. There is a link right here to do that. And yeah, if you want to learn more about Resolve 19, here's a video about that right there. You sweet friend, you watched this whole thing? Let me know that you watched this whole thing down in the comments, okay? I want to know who the OGs are, who the best watchers are.